is the Apparelist podcast, designed to bring you real-life conversation about high-level topics relevant to the decorated apparel community.
Welcome to the Apparelist podcast, all of you listeners out there. We are here in the month of October 2024, which is wild to me because I can't even wrap my head around where September went. But right now, the busy fall season is already in full swing for all of you decorators. So I would imagine most of you have holiday orders that are coming in that you're already working on. Just a side note before we get into today's episode, if you're looking for some additional insight on that topic, you find yourself just in the thick of it and not sure where to go, you can check out last month's episode where we spoke to a few folks who offered words of wisdom on managing rush and seasonal orders, just because it can be kind of chaotic. So feel free to go to apparelist.com, click on our podcast page, and you can access those previous episodes. But obviously, you are listening to the current episode for this month, where we are talking about a separate yet, equally valuable topic. And actually, in my opinion, is probably one of the most important topics to address in the decorated apparel community in particular, just because it comes up time and time again. There's a certain level, sometimes of false security, maybe even a little bit, lack of understanding surrounding this topic. And I am talking about cybersecurity and cyber attacks. I don't want to be a negative here to all of you listeners, but this is something we have to pay attention to. We do hear from a lot of decorators, oh my gosh, my accounts were compromised. Somebody cleaned out my bank account. I lost, customer information was compromised, things like that. This is a seriously important part of running a decorated apparel business. So we have discussed this topic before, but because of its importance, we are revisiting it to dive a little bit deeper. And here to discuss this are two of my good friends from the industry, Tom Faltyke and Amy Servey of Clients First. Amy, Tom, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I feel like last time when we had you on the show, we talked about so much, and there's just so many more points that we want to hit. So let's go into it. We talked a little bit about this in sort of the first episode that you guys joined the Apparelist podcast, but I kind of want to backtrack, in a nutshell. Regarding cybersecurity, why shouldn't apparel decorator shops be complacent about this? Amy, let's start with you, and then Tom, feel free to chime in whenever you're ready.
Sure. So the question, why shouldn't they be complacent? Well, I think, one of the things that we've learned this year, especially in the last quarter, is, cyber attacks are happening across multiple sizes of companies. And that's, I think Tom can weigh in on this as well. There was an FBI report recently out that stated, most cyber attacks are happening now with smaller companies. And I'll let Tom kind of weigh in on, what some of those statistics are around that. But again, handling the type of data that apparel decorators are handling, be it, images and licensing type, relationships, things like that, they can't underestimate the value of those things. And you mentioned customer information. That's just one of those things that they handle. But really understanding the data that they're dealing with, they may not understand that an image and or a relationship with a certain company or customer is just as important as the data that they're handling. So these are some of the things that we're seeing out in the industry that, again, are scary and prompt, cyber people on the other end, the attackers, to go after the smaller companies. Tom, do you want to talk a little bit about the FBI report that's been out?
Yeah, and if I can just, the key thing here to think about is it's estimated that on any given day, there's 15 billion emails that are going out that are spam and or decisive social engineering packages that are designed purely to take money from unexpecting people. Right.
Wow.
So when you think of how many of those, and that doesn't include the advent of AI, right? And AI is now getting even more. And these are the two areas that become relevant to any of our apparel decorators, right? Across the spectrum, because as Amy mentioned, one of the one of the best and easiest ways of getting into someone is to hide the virus inside of an image. And so a lot of people don't scan the images when a client gives them to them. And we're going right from, a digital to Garmin or a DTG type of an approach, or we're going to grab it and convert it to a JDF without realizing that they added it behind the scene. And all they're waiting for you to do is open the image or go to edit it, and it's off and running, right? From that standpoint. And out of the Verizon came about May of this year with an updated, they run what's called the data breach investigation report, because they look at it from their phone and from their fiber networks. And what came out of that report is 68% of all breaches happen through some aspect of an employee and employer clicking a socially engineered email, going and grabbing something off of social media that they thought they were promoting from just helping to promote their company. It's not malicious. It wasn't that someone was trying to do it intentionally to hurt the company. They thought they were doing something correct. And that's why you're going to hear a word that we like to use any longer, and it seems it's overused. But instead of being complacent, I would change that to vigilant. Right?
Yeah.
That the age of AI is coming and driving this now to a point where we can't say, oh, I tried this once 2 years ago and I'm good.
Yep.
We've had 3 clients that have heard this message and over the years have said they were good about different things, and each one fell to a social engineering. One was a custom website, a portal that they had for their customers. An attack was given and they lost $275,000 because the person that built it never had it vulnerability tested, and they found 2 open ports in the system where they could go in through the back end and adjust the payment routines, and they literally cut payments out to a fake company that AI set up. It looked real, and so they moved them. Another of our customers was given an email, and the email only had one change in the address. Here, the cyber criminals copied the same website, but they added an S into the URL because they couldn't legally own the same domain, but sent an email and said, we've changed our banking systems. We need you to do this. Please click this button and take this on. And they lost $175,000 just by looking. And had they looked at the email address, they would have realized that there was an S at the end of the company email address, never called it. And I don't know if they're ever going to get it back, right? It's those simple type of issues that can happen to anyone. And they're getting smarter and smarter out there to look at that type of stuff, right? Now, as Amy had mentioned, one of the things that came up, so the FBI created a report that we were part of the presentation back in March of this year, and I guess it's a couple months ago. But the biggest piece of that is that prior to 2020, 4 years ago, the average attack was hitting places where the average employee count was 1,000 and above. Fortune, 10,000, Fortune 1,000s. And one thing happened to the cyber criminals that were going after them. They weren't getting the money they expected. Those companies had the money, they had the people to fight. And so what's happened since then is cyber attacks in the US has increased 95% starting in 2023 and 2024 to small businesses, people under 100 employees, with the average being somewhere between 10 to 35 employees and being somewhere between $5 million to about $25 million. And the average out of there is that And the reason they do it, and they're doing it multiple times per day, is because those companies will pay if they get cyber locked, right? They don't have the resources to fight. They may not have looked at their infrastructure to make sure it was properly backed up. They may not have some of the tools that could be in place to alert their employees that this may be spam, or you never get emails from someone with this type of an address before, things like that. So the average ransom is $50,000. Right. And they may be able to collect that back from their insurance companies. They may not. It depends on how that is set up. And if they could even pass a audit that most insurance companies ask them to pass to see if they're vulnerable or too vulnerable to have that rider attached to their existing policy. So it's really troublesome from that standpoint, right? That the FBI was saying, look, they have no problem. They can take the same intelligence, the same level with less effort and target 50 small businesses a day and make more money than they would going after a McDonald's or a Boeing or, any of the large, a GM, because they will fight them for $1 million. And if they can make $250,000 every day, they're make $250,000 every day. At the end of the week, they still have the $1 million but they don't have to fight for 2 months to try to get it. So kind of an interesting approach. Now, the worst part is that FBI report also mentioned that if you did get locked, meaning that your data, your virtualized servers, your servers physically in your facility, or they could be in the cloud, got locked, you only have a 33% chance that when they give you the keys to unlock it, that it actually works. So you may not only be out the money, but you may end up being one of those 67% of the people that paid the money and then still were rendered useless in their systems, that they couldn't make the data work for them and had to start over. So these are, things, again, that drive us to that concept of being vigilant, that we can't be complacent.
I think that so many, and because those numbers, first of all, are very sobering, right? Yep. And very realistic to like, hey, this isn't just something we're talking about. Here's the data to back it up. But I think that what they really hammer home for me is like, I'm like the vast majority. I always think, oh, well, the people getting hit by these attacks are like the Wells Fargos of the world and like the big, like these huge corporations. So I think, unfortunately, that mindset creates a false sense of security, right? And I think that you guys pointing out to these data points in this report saying otherwise, I mean, I don't want to scare decorators, but should scare decorators.
Yeah. And it really, and this is to inform everyone, right? There is a path to move forward here, but sometimes it takes people to have truly their eyes wide open to realize, oh my goodness, maybe you do know someone where their bank account was taken. When we were at Apparel Decorators in 23, we heard 2 examples of people whose accounts were compromised, right? That they had gotten in. And so that this is happening. It may not be with you at this moment, but the point is not if, it's when. And are you prepared for that? And how devastating is that when it happens to you? Right. And that's why, just like any insurance policy, building up and becoming vigilant, no matter your size. And there's different scopes of what does vigilant mean to a smaller decorator to a larger one, because they're going to have more points, more potential areas of issues, the larger ones. So you need to plan it appropriately, but you wouldn't go out and need to get a loan or feel that you can't make payroll. It's small steps to begin, but as long as you keep building on this over time, I think it can do nothing but help you, right?
There's one thing that I think is important for the apparel decorator group that we learned when we were with them a year ago. Most of these shops are Google users, right? They love Google. They're Mac users. They're all of that. One of the things that's really, really key for them, and any company for that matter that's running Google, is, and we do this, all of us do this personally, or not all of us, but many of us do this personally, is we store passwords on our Google, on our Google browser. The problem with that is that browser's built-in password manager may not be the safest place for them to be doing this. So, and there's a few reasons why. There's centralized risk. So if someone gains access to your Google account, they could potentially access all of your saved passwords. So that then creates like this single point of failure for a company, especially if they're commingling their personal and their business work, where I have like appareldecorator@gmail.com, or, which we see all the time. In addition, they've got weak password protection. So although Google encrypts passwords, they don't, your Google account itself may have a weak password or lacks, two-factor authentication, which makes it a lot easier for attackers to get in. Then you got to the point Tom was making about vigilance. You're very vulnerable to phishing. So if you're tricked by a phishing attack, then you give up your Google credentials, hackers are, it's good to go. Like it's open. So in one swoop, they can take everything from you. And then, you've got limited control. So using a dedicated password manager, which we talked just this week with another group of folks about, will offer you more control over encryption and storage practices, while Google's built-in manager has fewer advanced security features. So these are just some of the things right away that companies can do. And again, not advocating for products or things like that. It's just, again, like Tom said, it's education and awareness. But as a small business or a larger apparel decorator, these are some of the best practices that we advocate companies take to start moving away from that trust of, doing things like built-in browser password managers. It's just not worth it anymore. So,
yeah, Amy, I'm smiling here at the other end of my mic because you and I had this conversation.
Yep.
I think it was last week, and I'm thinking to myself as you're talking about this, I'm like, I do that all the time. I'm there. Google pops up like, hey, you want me to save your password? I'm like, ooh, yes, how convenient. And then I after you were talking to me about that, I was like, oh no. And what's really funny about that then is a few days ago, I had a conversation with somebody I know who's like, yep, just got an alert that my password and whatever has been found on the dark web. I need to go and it was like a legitimate alert, right? It was from his bank. Like I need to go change everything, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like even for just me personally, I don't run a small business, but just for personal use, like you said, we start to commingle those things, and boy, it lit a fire under me, that's for sure.
Good.
And that is the next piece that is going to be the vulnerability for anyone, especially for a smaller apparel decorator, is their phone. Right. Yeah. So we were just, Amy and I were at a user group talking to some people that are in the overall print industries. And I brought up quishing. Right. Quishing is a cell phone attack where you hit a bad QR code and you scan it. And what it does is it's actually downloading a virus to watch your keys as you're keying into your personal bank account. So it can grab your e-banking. It can grab anything that's on your phone. The newest one that came out, and the IBM found and announced this over the summer, is called smishing, which is you get a text message from an 800 number or something and says, one of the FBI alerts from June was for toll collections. You owe a toll collection. Click here to pay your toll. You missed it. Some people will look and go, oh, you're right. I have an Easy Pass, or I have this type of a California Pass, or the one in Florida, right? Or the Texas. I'll click that. When you click it, you're actually letting them send data down where they're now sitting there reading your phone messages. Another one was UPS and FedEx. It's a cyber criminal that sends out alerts saying your package couldn't be delivered. Would you mind doing an e-signature so we can deliver your package? Most of us, if our personal phone is an extension of our business, So you would think, oh, UPS is trying to deliver the emblems that I need or the material that I need, and I better sign this because I'm at home or I'm doing this. I may not be in the office. Without thinking, you go to a website and you start entering credentials, and it just starts taking and taking, right? It's little things like this that they're always thinking ahead, and becomes that whole vigilant aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's so funny because I also am thinking back to when we had our first podcast together, talking about just like those basics of like the email. I'm not joking. Even if I get an email from like an internal coworker that I know is legit, I'm still like reading their address like 3 or 4 times, being like, does it have one letter off? Does it have, because like, but these things are all really important to pay attention to, and kind of the basics, which I kind of want to go into next. Okay, so we've presented all this data. We've put the fear into these people. Again, I hate using the word fear. Like I like the word vigilant. Let's say that.
Yeah.
Okay, we've opened up the opportunity for decorators to be vigilant, right? To be more vigilant. Let's put in place some tools. Where do decorators even go, Amy, to start implementing protections? Who do they talk to? What are some good resources that they can just start at, let's say, square one?
Tom, you want to take this one?
Sure.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the first place I would go to is everyone has at some point a trusted IT person, right? Sure. Or a firm or an MSP. They may not do a lot for you if you're smaller, and I don't expect people to have a dedicated person in-house. And even a person that you have in-house won't be able to know everything that's evolving, right? Because their worldview is what they see happening in their environment and what they have free time to digest out there in the world. So if you have an IT partner, I would go to them and look at some of the basic tools, right? Like we talked about the last time that we would want some type of multi-factor authentication for people, right? That you would want passwords to be complicated. So like Amy said, we always recommend a password manager. Now there's at least a dozen out there. I would look for one that doesn't, in their EULA, in their operating agreement, that would sell your name to other marketing people. So the ones that tend to be cheaper or free, you have to understand why they're free. They're free because you just gave them the right to take your name, your address, your business, your telephone number, and give that to their marketing partner so they can start marketing to you, right? Mm-hmm. So the ones that may cost a couple dollars a month are probably a little stronger if you value your privacy from that standpoint. A few of them allow you to separate company passwords from individual. So if someone does leave the company, they can take their passwords with them. So it's just that whole idea of taking it off of Google, taking it off of an Apple OS type of a browser, and putting it somewhere separate where that is also protected and it has multi-factor, right? We always say that every laptop or server should have a basic virus protection where it's updated, and you should set them that they update automatically, right? You should have a malware and a virus type of a tool. There's a variety of those out there, but it shouldn't be on just one person's laptop, right? You should do it across the board on your servers and on any device from that aspect to check that. For apparel decorators that are having websites out there that are custom portals, I would talk about looking to do a scan to make sure there's no vulnerabilities or ports that are accidentally hard-coded into the programs that leave them open and suspect, from that aspect. I think also that you'd want to scan images to verify there's no malware attached to it, right? It's called I'm trying to think it's basically altering the image is an easy way of using the term, where they alter it to include and weave the virus into it from that standpoint. And the other basic is really ensuring a backup. right? So if you think of what does very small apparel decorator need to get started, these are the pieces, right? You need a basic firewall that has security. If you're doing it from a home garage or something, any basic router will give you the ability to buy an annual plan that scans and protects that home router device or cable modem that's coming in, right? Most are at about $100 a year annually. So it's not a large amount, but it can protect that. And it's really checking what's going on there. Then you want to get to that kind of a password device for your laptop and maybe only have a few from that aspect. So you want them to rotate, you want it to be multi-factored. Virus protection, again, it's a couple dollars, maybe it's 10 or 15 a month per device. You want to have that with a malware piece to it so that it's really checking everything. And then the next base is going to be your backups. What should that backup look like, right? Do you have servers? And if you do, you really want to have something that can protect the servers, especially if you're interacting with your clients and they're automatically taking data and pulling it into those portals, and those portals sit on a SQL server or whatever you've built out there. You really want to protect those. Besides, if you're on QuickBooks or whatever, financials and things like that, because of the ability to get in and change those things rapidly, right? So we talk about immutable backups, meaning that you want to interlace your backups so that if you do them every 15 minutes, within an hour, everything's complete. Or if it's an interlace backup, it's 5-minute points so that if something happened to your servers, a lot of today's modern tools allow you to go back a minute before the attack happened, locate it, quarantine it, and then begin again. So at most, the company would be down maybe a half hour to an hour, but your data at most that you could lose is no more than 15 minutes, right? So it's really, and these are not super expensive tools that are out there, but to me, that would be a basic beginner's kit. And then from there, you would want to begin some of that continuous training. And that's where we talk about purchasing or joining an anti-phishing tool that would work inside of your email to fake out internally. It would literally do what we call ethical hacking or ethical phishing, which means the company itself is providing these to try to teach and help people learn what not to fall victim to. Again, trying to reduce that 68% of people that accidentally got the breach to happen by helping them learn different aspects like that, right? So I think that would be the beginning pieces. And there are conversations you can have with your MSP and your partner to begin to look at some of those things.
The last piece too is, if there are machines, whether they're presses, whether they're, screen printing type of machines, the machines that themselves, the software that's on those machines are also incredibly vulnerable. And many of those have older software on there. They're software that may be Windows CE, we were joking about this week, or, Windows Vista. Those types of operating systems have to be up to date. And if they're not capable of being up to date, then that's yet again another thing we need to talk about as a part of a vulnerability up in that organization. So I just wanted to add the machine piece as well. Yeah.
I'm glad you did. Wouldn't have even thought about that. And I wonder if a lot of, couple man shops probably wouldn't have even thought about that either.
Right. You buy leased equipment or outdated equipment because that's what you can't afford to get started. And yet you might be that one company that gets hacked because of that. So how do we help? Yeah.
Remember, Microsoft no longer supports, nor does their security support Vista, XP, Windows 9, Windows 8, Windows CE devices any longer because they believe that those were wrapped up 10 years ago. right? So you still have some of and if you've linked your machines from an IoT or a direct to print, direct to garment type of an approach that you're connecting it, and you haven't nested them on your server or in your network so that they're protected from the outside, especially the older ones, then they could be vulnerable that that image that was going to them could literally lock that up. And I mean, how would you even get the panel back to operational at that point?
Right? Oh my goodness. Uh, First of all, now I'm like having visions of having a third podcast episode with you guys to talk more about some of this stuff. But before we explore that, I want to talk really quickly, speaking of like resources and partnering with people, you guys are an affinity partner with Printing United Alliance. So you guys serve as a really important resource. Do you guys just kind of want to give a quick down and dirty, what does that mean? How does that set you up to be a partner with some of our Alliance members?
Sure. So for those that don't know what the Affinity program is through Printing United, it's a program that offers exclusive member-only discounts on certain services and products and things. And so Clients First was asked to participate in this, and gladly we have. It's a great opportunity for both the members and for Clients First to get involved in what companies are looking for from a software and services perspective. Our offering on the Affinity page of the printing.org website is a complimentary cybersecurity threat management test. So what this is, it's a real life lockdown of how hackers could get into your business network, what they could steal, what they can lock down, and it's an easy checkup on user behavior. So what happens is we run this test. We basically do, like Tom said, an ethical hack. We're doing inside and outside the organization. So not just what happens internally, but, getting in from the outside, as Tom's mentioned, a couple of those ways that people are getting in, portals, et cetera. And then what we do is once that test is completed, it all runs behind the scenes. So nobody has to do anything. They can just allow us to get in. We enable a piece of software, and then it runs for a couple of days. We come back to you with this report. We schedule a time to come back and review this report. It's an actual document that outlines how the penetration went from, again, both inside and outside of your company. And even if no one does anything with us, maybe they find, they have other resources or companies that they're working with, no problem. What this report, though, can serve for any company who has it is a way for them to obtain cyber insurance. This is a document that the insurance companies will say, okay, great, you've just done this, and you know what your vulnerability is. So it's a win-win no matter what. And it allows the company to really kind of see what their vulnerability is. And there's no prejudice, no size. It's like size doesn't matter here. It's everybody. So it's we welcome, a one person to, like Tom said, a large organization to take advantage of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, huge benefit of being a member for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just as an example, if I may just chime in, I know we're running short. So 2 of these tests that were performed last year, one found, and remember, it's cyber criminals will put something anywhere that there's an IP address that's been masked to your network. So one found it in the document storage of a copier. So the copier programs were designed that they, as part of their workflow, they would stick it in the complementary document storage in there, and it was sitting in there reading as files were coming in, determining where it was going to go and things like that. Another one was in the external security cameras around the facility, because those were set up with a memory in them, so in case they lost the line, they could still record. So it was sitting in the flash memory inside of one of the IP cameras that were sitting out against the warehouse dock.
Oh my gosh. Again, all the areas you don't think are vulnerable, they are.
Yep. Exactly.
So we're going to provide quite a few additional resources in the show notes. Tom and Amy have graciously provided some additional resources and information, ways to, help your apparel decorating business. But is there anywhere else that our listeners can go to learn more, somewhere where you guys want our listeners to connect with you? Where would they find you?
Yeah, so I'll provide this as well, but we've got a page that gives them the opportunity to maybe schedule a conversation with us. All of this, is complimentary to anybody. If they just want, a more one-on-one kind of conversation, or, hey, I've been concerned about certain things. What do I do? We're here as that subject matter expert for the membership to be able to lean on. And we want to just help. Again, they may or may not decide to do anything with us, and that's okay. We're here as a resource to everybody.
I love it.
Well, so I'll share that link, I guess, to you, and you'll put it at the bottom. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, we'll make sure we share that in the show notes. And then, of course, all of you Apparelist podcast listeners out there are plenty of ways to continue to connect with our affinity partners through printing.org, through apparelist.com. There's lots of ways that we connect this community, make sure that we're supporting all of you. Feel free to reach out to me personally. I'm happy to connect you with the people you want to talk to. Until possibly next time with you guys. We'll talk about that later. Amy, Tom, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.